You are 14 years old. A cold dawn breaks over the Roman Empire in the year 50 AD. You are awake because today is your wedding day. You did not plan this event. You did not ask for this fate. You hold no shiny engagement ring. You did not spend months picking out a white dress. A stranger waits at the end of this path. Your father chose him. You have looked at his face maybe twice in your life. He is an old man, a decade older than you, maybe much older. In a few hours, your whole family and your entire village will watch you become his wife. You are 14. Here's the truth that should freeze your blood. A silent room waits for you. Nobody in that room sees a crime. Nobody sees a scandal. For them, this is just Tuesday. What built this reality? Why did ancient humans wed at an age that guarantees a prison cell today? Why was 12 or 14 a perfectly normal starting line for a marriage? Do we blame power? Do we blame money or flesh and bone? Were your ancestors desperate monsters? The real answer is harder to swallow. It is strange. It is deeply uncomfortable. It is deeply human. The youth of ancient brides is not a single tale. A tangled knot of death, harsh laws, cold coin, and raw survival ties it together. Pull that knot apart. You will uncover a disturbing picture of the actual dirt your ancestors stood on. You climbed directly out of that same dirt. Every single person watching this screen exists because of an unbroken chain of these exact marriages. If a single one of those teenage brides stopped breathing before she gave birth, you would not exist. Your life required her survival. Let that fact settle in your bones. Let us start with the most obvious suspect. We must look at death. You hear this number everywhere. The ancient world offered a lifespan of 30 years. Sometimes 25. A brutal logic follows. A reaper waits for you at 30. You hit middle age at 14. You must rush to breed before you return to the dirt. That logic is dead wrong. The 30-year life expectancy hides a massive lie. People did not just drop dead on their 30th birthday. 30 was an average. A heavy weight dragged that average into the mud. Babies, dead babies. Lots and lots of tiny graves. The ancient world drowned in dead children. A third of them took their last breath before they walked. Half of them vanished before they reached 10 years old. Picture 10 children standing in a small room. 5 of them rot in the earth before they hit double digits. A fever took them. A scraped knee turned black with infection. A simple cut killed them. They starved from lack of food. They had no pills. They had no idea why the air itself seemed to murder their kids. Mix a society where half the children die with the adults who survive. You get the number 30. It is a statistical ghost. It describes almost nobody's actual living years. Here's the twist. You survived childhood. You beat that brutal gauntlet of early graves. Your life stretched out before you. A Roman breathing at 15 could easily see 60. Many saw their 70th winter. Cicero breathed until 63. An executioner's blade ended him, not old age. Augustus ruled until 75. Cato the Elder saw 85. These people did not race against an early tomb. The 14-year-old bride did not expect a grave at 30. She could easily walk the earth for another 50 years. Our first answer shatters. They did not marry as children because they died as young adults. If a desperate race against death did not force their hands in this way, what on earth pushed them into these beds? We must look at the law. Romans carved everything into cold stone and ink on scrolls. They recorded the exact age a human body became legally ready for a wedding bed. The numbers will jolt you. Roman law demanded 12 years for girls, 14 for boys, 12. These were not hidden whispers. You find these rules in the massive legal codes built by Emperor Justinian. He gathered centuries of older rules. Roman lawmakers looked at puberty. They looked at the physical machinery needed to make a child. They drew a hard line at 12 and 14. They built an empire on top of it. The law draws a straight line. Reality walks a different path. A speed limit sign says 65. That does not mean every cart travels at 65. Historians wanted the truth. They found a clever witness. They looked at carved rock. Romans loved their funerary markers. They carved deep lines into tombstones. They recorded the age of the dead. They wrote down who bought the stone. A husband buried a wife. A father buried a daughter. In the late 1980s, historians hunted through thousands of these cold stones. They read the carved rocks to find the real numbers. They broke the old textbooks in half. The cold stone told a different story for ordinary Roman women. The average age for a first wedding did not sit at 12. It hovered in the late teens. Normal girls married at 18 or 20. Most regular Roman daughters did not jump into a marriage bed at the first legal second. They married as young women. They did not marry as children. Carved rocks tell the truth for the common dirt farmer. For the ruling blood, wedding beds came much faster. Elite daughters married in their early teens. Many married at exactly 12. They stood right on the legal floor. The old scrolls hold names that make modern eyes bleed. Emperor Augustus gave his own flesh and blood, Julia, to a man when she was 14. The rich engaged their children as toddlers and married them off before they stopped growing. A real pattern crawls out of the dark. Fear of a fast grave did not drive this. Gold and blood drove them. The heavier your purse, the younger your daughter wore a veil. This single heavy truth shatters the whole mystery. Biology did not push these girls to the altar. Raw power pushed them. Look closely at a wealthy Roman wedding. You will not find romance. You will not find two souls meeting in the dark. A father traded his daughter for land. Families forged a contract. They slammed two piles of gold together. They locked down blood. They bought male heirs to inherit their name and their dirt. A daughter was a tool. She was a pawn pushed across a board. Trade her early, and you lock the door on that deal. You hand her entire fertile life over to a chosen family. A poor man with empty pockets did not care about this. A farmer did not need a treaty with another farmer. He needed his daughter's strong back in his field for as long as he could keep her. He needed years to scrape together a few copper coins. So the poor waited. The pressure to marry a child grew heavier with every piece of gold on the table. This was never about young girls. It was about how a father could spend them. Men built the machinery of family power. They ran that heavy machine on the bodies of children. Rome is one empire. Widen the map. You might think Rome held a special kind of harshness. The ancient dirt holds a different truth. Walk into ancient Athens. People call it the birthplace of free men and deep thought. The city of Socrates. The marriage rules in that dry dust were even more extreme. Fathers gave away Athenian girls at 14. Here's the fact that will snap your neck. Their new husbands were 30. A man with a beard and a 14-year-old girl. Nobody blinked. That was a completely normal Athenian wedding. The writer Xenophon described a husband teaching his teenage wife how to run a house. He treated her like a pupil. To him, she was just a student. Why 30 and 14? Economics. A man needed hard years to build his life. He had to swing a sword for the city. He had to buy a roof. A girl only needed her body to mature. This massive age gap was not a flaw. It was the design. Walk further east. Walk deeper into the past. You find the exact same story buried in the sand across Mesopotamia and Egypt. Men tied weddings to physical maturity. Families traded girls as property. They handed young teens to older men with heavy pockets. This was not just a Roman habit. This was not a Greek sickness. Across the vast stretch of the ancient world, this was simply how the machine worked. You might think that dust has settled on this story. You might believe ancient dirt holds only young brides. A grim, endless march of children. That is a lie. The story takes a sharp left turn. A turn you do not expect. A massive stretch of the map flipped the script. It sits closer to your front door than you think. In the 1960s, a man named John Hagnall blew up our biggest assumptions about the past. He dug through old marriage scrolls. He found a bizarre truth. He drew an invisible line across the map. It cuts from Russia down to Italy. On either side of that invisible line, the world splits in half. Look to the east and south. You find the old rules. Young brides. Universal marriage. Look to the northwest. Cross this line, and the world flips upside down. Walk into England, France, or Germany, and the pattern shatters. You will find something deeply strange. People waited. They waited a long time. Women in these cold lands did not rush to a bed. They commonly wed in their middle to late 20s. Men were even older. A massive chunk of these people, sometimes 20%, never wore a ring at all. Read that again. The dirt holds a different truth. The average woman did not wear a veil as a child. She bled her sweat into someone else's field. She scrubbed strange floors. She scraped together copper coins for years. She bought her own independence before she ever looked at a husband. They were not 14-year-old brides. They were 25-year-old women. That is a trick of history. Let that cold fact sink in. What everybody knows about the past is flat out wrong. Why did the Northwest break the old rules? Look at the cold, hard dirt of economics. In these lands, a new husband and wife had to build their own roof. They had to light their own fire. They did not just walk into a father's house. To build that roof, you needed heavy coins. You needed land or a trade. You needed bread in your pocket. You could not just marry at 14 with empty hands and sleep in your mother's bed. You had to wait until you could actually afford to survive. So, young men and women spent their teens bleeding for coin. They worked. They saved. A wedding ring became something you bought with years of sweat. It was not a fate that crashed into you the second your body matured. Now look back at the old world. A boy takes a 14-year-old girl. They simply walk into his father's compound. They eat from the family pot. They throw their hands into the family dirt. They face no economic wall. So they did not wait. This single heavy truth changes everything. Marrying at 14 or 25 was never about morals. It was never about biology. It was about who bought the bread. The age of a bride flows downstream from a purse of coins. We must face the deepest force buried in the ancient dirt. Children, a desperate hunger to make them, and the terrifying wall you had to climb to keep them breathing. Pull those dark numbers back out. A third of babies dead in the dirt before year 1. Half of all children rotting in tiny graves before year 10. Look at what that means for a family with empty hands. You need children to work the land. You need blood to carry your name. You need strong hands to feed you when you're old and your bones snap. There's no pension. Your children are your only shield against starving in the cold. And half of them will die. How many children must a woman make to guarantee 2 live long enough to bury you? You need 5, 6, or 7. Every time a woman's belly swelled, a ticking clock started. Childbirth was a brutal killer. It slaughtered women without mercy. Connect the cold facts. A father needs a woman to endure 8 pregnancies just to hold 2 living adults. The human body only holds so much time. A cold mathematics takes over. You must start as early as the flesh allows. Every year you wait is a year of blood wasted. Every year is a lost chance to cheat a starving death. This is the engine burning under it all. Not love. Not a legal scroll. Mathematics. The brutal arithmetic of a world where babies died faster than bodies could replace them. You had to start young. You could never stop. Look through their eyes. None of this felt monstrous. A Roman father handing his 14-year-old girl to a man did not think he was a villain. He believed he was saving her. He secured her a future where a woman standing alone was prey. The horror is not that these fathers were evil. The horror is that they were normal men. They did what their bloody world called an act of love. The thin line separating a monster from a loving father is drawn by raw death rates. We did not grow better hearts. We simply stopped dropping half our children into the earth. That changed the entire machine. We followed the dark path all the way down. We looked at death and how we misread the graves. We looked at the laws, the power, and the coins that bought brides. We stared at the brutal mathematics of survival. but a heavy question remains. We just talked about Rome 2,000 years ago. We talked about Athens. We treat these places like the deep past. They are not. Look at the whole timeline. Homo sapiens have walked this dirt for 300,000 years. The Romans are just yesterday. They are the last blink of an eye. What about the dark stretch before? What happened before men carved laws into stone? What happened before humans built cities or planted wheat? What did partnership look like for the hunter-gatherers who survived the deep past? The old dirt holds a wild secret. Anthropologists looking at ancient bones found a massive hint. The 14-year-old bride might be a new invention, a product of farming, a product of property and hoarding land. A strong argument points to a different world. Before agriculture, before fathers traded daughters for gold, the engine of early marriage did not exist. For most of our time on this earth, a wedding bed looked nothing like Rome. The oldest clues sit in graves tens of thousands of years old. We find bodies laid down side by side. We find them holding hands in the red dust. We find them in the deep dark of the ice. They tell a story about human bonding that is older than farming, older than words, older than civilization itself. It is the oldest proof of what it means for two humans to belong to each other. To understand that truth, we must leave Rome behind. We must walk into the cold. We must walk into a dark cave where two people holding hands in the dirt for 30,000 years finally teach us who we really are.